Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, the supremost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 10, Divisions of the Creation, text number 10. And purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself, and always under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of Kala, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There is a time for atomic dissolution and a time for universal dissolution. There is a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there is a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation. So after the terrible battle of Kurukshetra was over, there were only a few soldiers left alive on the side of the Kurus. On the Pandava side, there were yet a few thousand who were still living. But on the Kuru side, there was Duryodhana, but his legs had been broken in the final fight with Bhimasena. So he was laying on the ground just waiting to give up his life. And there was also Ashwatthama, who is the son of Drona, the military teacher of the Pandavas and the Kurus. And the military teacher, yeah. The Pandavas and the Kurus. And there were also with Ashwatthama two others, Kripa and Kritavarman. So Ashwatthama was very unhappy. He wanted revenge because he considered that his father, Dronacharya, had been killed in the battle unfairly. And he had many other complaints against the way the Pandavas had fought and won this war. So he declared to Duryodhana his intention to continue the fight. So Duryodhana, he asked that Kripa anoint by, like Abhishek, pouring water over Ashvatthama to make him the next commander of the Kuru side. So then these three, Ashvatthama, Kripa, and Kritavarman, they went into the forest. And there they took rest for the night. Now they had been perplexed how the three of them would carry on the battle against the 5 Pandavas and thousands of soldiers. But Ashvatthama, he was so angry, he couldn't give up the idea. So the other two went to sleep, but Ashvatthama, he was awake, just thinking, how can I kill off these Pandavas? So in the middle of the night, he saw in a tree in that forest that there was a flock of crows who were sleeping. And an owl, you know this bird with the big eyes? An owl attacked these crows while they were sleeping and killed them one after the other. He killed them so swiftly that the other sleeping crows were not alarmed, and so he could kill all of them. And so therefore he got his idea, his strategy. So he immediately woke up his two, his two associates. And together they proceeded to the camp of the Pandavas. Now in this camp there were the 5 sons of the 5 Pandavas, sons of Draupadi. And there was Drishtadyumna, who had killed Dronacharya. And there were many other soldiers. The 5 Pandavas were not there. So all these soldiers in that camp were taking rest. And Dronacharya's Ashvatthama's intention was to enter that camp and kill them all while they were sleeping, like the owl had done to the crows. So, but as he approached the camp, then suddenly in front of the entrance, there appeared a very gigantic being. Which was very terrible to look at. It looked like a huge Rakshasa. And it had a very fearsome face with thousands of eyes in the face. and it had many huge arms. Each hand was carrying a different weapon. Around the lower part of its body, this being was wearing a bloody tiger skin. And on the upper part of his body, he had a black deer skin. And he was wearing a big snake for a sacred thread. So Ashvatthama tried to overpower this terrible creature. He fired all kinds of arrows and threw other weapons, but this monstrous creature simply devoured all those weapons. They just went into his mouth and he swallowed them. And then this fearsome creature began to approach Ashvatthama. So Ashvatthama, seeing this creature coming, began to think of Lord Shiva. As soon as he thought of Lord Shiva, then a fire altar with blazing fire appeared before him. And seated around this fire altar, they were celestial entities with heads of different kinds of animals. And they were carrying big choppers, big weapons for chopping. So Ashvatthama could understand that this was to be a sacrifice, and he was to be the thing sacrificed. So meditating on Lord Shiva, Ashvatthama, he approached that fire altar to be killed and to be placed in the fire. But suddenly Lord Shiva himself appeared there. And Lord Shiva revealed that this huge form that had guarded the entrance to the Pandavas' camp was none other than himself. This form of Lord Shiva is called Kala Bhairava. Kala means time. So this is Kala Bhairava is actually the form of time. And this is also a form of Krishna. Later in this, it is confirmed in this verse that we've just heard. Later, Lord Kapiladev in the same third canto will explain the same thing. Cheshta yata sa bhagavan kala iti upalakshita. That kala, time, is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. And it is by this time, cheshta yata sa Bhagavan. So it is by time that everything is in motion. Everything is, all activities are being carried out. So Lord Shiva informed Ashvatam that this camp of Pandava soldiers has been under my protection. Because I am nothing other than the order carrier of the lotus-eyed Lord Krishna. And until now it has been his desire that all these soldiers here be under the protection of time. But now, at this moment, their time has run out. And you, Ashvatthama, now come under the protection of time. So Ashvatthama, who just a moment before thought, now I am gone, understood that his plan would be fulfilled. So, in this way, all living entities are governed by the time factor. We all have our desires, but whether or not they will be fulfilled depends on time. So time is said to be the via media, the link between spirit and matter. We are spirit, but our desires are focused on matter. We have no, as a spirit soul, jiva, tattva, we have no direct power to move matter. That is not under our control. But the movement of matter is effected by time, the via media between spirit and the gross material energy. Another way to understand this is that matter is what? Durga Devi. And Durga Devi's husband is Lord Shiva. So all living entities appear within the womb of Durga. She is the supreme mother of everyone, including the demigods. But above Durga Devi is her lord, her husband, Mahadev, Lord Shiva. Mahadev means among the demigods he is the greatest, because he is actually the ruler of the material energy. He is time, Kala Bhairava, by which all things are taking place in the material world. And time is destructive, ultimately. Is destructive. Time is understood in three phases: creation, maintenance, and finally destruction. That's the end. So this is why Srila Prabhupada says Lord Krishna is speaking to all living entities in the form of time. A very interesting and profound point. That Krishna, just as he spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, though perhaps due to foolishness or impiety, so many living entities cannot take advantage of Bhagavad Gita, but still Krishna speaks to them also as time. Showing them, demonstrating all around that all of your endeavors to enjoy this world are useless. So time is a very hard teacher. It is said that time is the teacher of everyone, and time kills all of his own students. So the actual lesson then to be learned from time, as Srila Prabhupada said so many times, is that we must surrender to Krishna. Then we become free from time. We fear time. The fear of death is also the action of the time factor. What we fear is not only the destruction of our false sense of identity in the form of this body, but also we fear the reactions to our sinful activities that are waiting for us in future time. Just like Prajapati Daksha, he was killed by Virabhadra, who is the son of Lord Shiva, who is another form of Kala Bhairava. But he was killed and then brought back to life to suffer his sinful reactions. Lord Shiva brought him back to life, giving him the head of a goat to wear on his shoulders. So that was a reaction to his offensiveness. So this is why we fear time so much. Not only that we have to die, suffer death, but instinctively everyone is worried about what comes next. Yet again, time brings liberation for those who know the proper use of time. Those who are sinful, they fear time. But those who know how to use their time properly, then they can actually see time is Krishna, who comes to take us from this world. Those who know properly how to use time. Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Shaknoti haiva yakshodam praksharira vimokshanat kama kroda bhavan vegam yukta sasuki nara. That among men, among the naras, the humans, there are those who are actually happy, even in this temporary material world. Who are these happy men? These are the yogis, sayukta, those who are connected with Krishna. How did they become connected to Krishna? Shaknoti haiva yashodam praksharira vimokshanat. Hare Krishna. That they properly utilized the time that they have before quitting this body. How did they properly utilize that time? Kama kroda bhavad vegam. So the important word is shodam. Shodam means tolerate. They learned to tolerate lust and anger and passion. Shodam. Yes. The word in this verse, vegam. Vegam means passion, or Prabhupada used to translate it pushing agent. There are 6 vegam, 6 pushings. The mind, anger, words, the tongue, the belly, the genital. So these 6, they push us to waste our time in sinful activities. And thus we become subject in this life to kama kroda. Kama means lust, and kroda means frustration, despair. That means the modes of passion and ignorance. In the beginning of life, we're very passionate, enthusiastic, lusty to enjoy this world. And in the end of life, when we are old and weak and used up, we feel very hopeless. Like some helpless animal waiting to be slaughtered. No escape. So this is despair. But Lord Krishna says, Sa yukta sa sukhi nara. It doesn't have to be that way. You can be happy, even in this material body. But you have to learn to tolerate the vegam, the passions which push us in sinful activities. This Prajapati Daksha, he was very lusty because he's a Prajapati, progenitor, demigod whose function is to produce so many offspring to populate the universe. So because he had so much kama, so much lust, he could not check the force of anger. And thus he committed offenses against Sati and Shiva. Sati is his own daughter, but she is the eternal consort of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, again, he is the time factor himself. Or another way of thinking of this is Sati and Shiva are the dangerous forms of Radha and Krishna. They have the names, Prabhupada explains, Rudra and Rudrani. So this word Rudra, Rudrani, the root word is means to cry. To cry is when one is very unhappy, one cries, or one shouts, or roars, screams. So Rudra and Rudrani, they make everyone cry in this material world. So who is this everyone? This everyone are the offenders. Those who are full of offenses. Those who, because of their offenses, are separated from the service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. They come under the control of Sati and Shiva, or Rudra and Rudrani. So this Prajapati Daksha, being an offender, he became angry towards Lord Shiva and towards his own daughter, Sati Devi. And so he had to suffer so much at the hands of time. So, this should be a good lesson for us, that instead of offending their lordships, we should serve them. And by service, we become free of punishment. So service again begins with sodhum, with learning to tolerate the pushings of mind, anger, words, tongue, belly, genital. Without practicing this tolerance, this sense control, there's no progress in devotional service. So you're getting that practice here. We have to tolerate no water, no cooking gas, a crowded house, and outside there are so many nasty people who want to make trouble. Just like it was only 1 year ago, a little more than 1 year ago, the devotees were kicked out of their last house by some demons. And then they moved here, and you may think, those who are visiting, that it's troublesome now, but you should have seen them. It was 100 times worse. We won't even describe it. So in the face of problems, devotees simply serve Krishna. That is their satisfaction. Like the 5 Pandavas, when they were exiled to the forest, their satisfaction was simply serving Krishna. They were kings, but for 12 years they had to live in the forest. And they accepted that. Yes, what can we do? We lost the gambling match. And by patiently tolerating these reverses, they attracted Krishna's infinite compassion. Krishna desired, these devotees are so staunch, so fixed. Even now they're cast out into the wilderness. Still, they do not give up their dedication to my lotus feet. They're cast out, they're kicked out. Wilderness, the forest. So therefore Lord Krishna desired that they rule the world. And 13 years later, they were ruling the world. But even then, in the midst of opulence, the whole world at their feet, they also remained completely sense-controlled, tolerating this also. So this is the example for every devotee, that in times of want, in times of distress, one should remain patient, serve Krishna, don't despair, don't fall under the mode of ignorance. And in times of opulence, don't fall under the mode of passion. And become lusty and thus spoiled. You can see in this part of the world, these countries, Bulgaria, Romania, this is the history. They were once very opulent countries. But the people became spoiled. Just like I was saying yesterday in the Gita class, sin actually means to mismanage Krishna's property. This is the essence of offensiveness. To not utilize things as Krishna intends, but instead to waste them, to steal them. And when we come to Romania, Bulgaria, we see wasting, stealing, very prominent. This is the culture. This is the habit. Of course, it is going on all over the world. And it must be stopped. These offenses to the Supreme Lord must be stopped. That is Srila Prabhupada's mission. He said that the principle of his mission, this Krishna consciousness movement, the principle is utility. To utilize everything properly in Krishna's service. People have become so foolish. They do not know how to use anything properly anymore. I was telling last night, Ruchir Avatar Prabhu, how there's this new law in Bulgaria. You cannot take diesel out of the country in canisters in your car. So last time when we went to Greece a month ago, we didn't know this. This is a new law. And when we were on the border at Kulata, the men said, "You cannot take this." We had 70 liters of diesel. And they said, "You cannot take it out." And I said, "Well, we can pay tax." No. So then what to do? Finally, we just had to pour it on the ground. So they were satisfied. Oh, good. This means no brain. So with such people in charge, no wonder there's no water and no cooking gas. No wonder nothing works. They don't know how to utilize Krishna's energy properly. So that is the principle of the Krishna consciousness movement. Utility. The basis of this utility, Prabhupada said, is Srila Prabhupada's books. Books are the basis. So, in other words, when we speak of using everything in Krishna's service, basically we're speaking of using everything to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. And the essential purpose of this is to preach, to propagate Krishna consciousness throughout society. Preaching is the essence. And purity is the force. That is the power by which all this will be accomplished. And that again brings us back to the first point, utility. What does purity mean? It means using everything, this body, this mind, everything, all resources, simply in Krishna's service, never for sense gratification. So if we cultivate this fourfold mission of Srila Prabhupada's movement, then in time, since we're speaking of time, then in time even this hellish place will become like Vaikuntha. So, are there any questions? Yes, Nikunja. What?
Because our offenses and mistakes are not bringing to us, and when they are the reason for our degradation.
Does she mean offenses while executing devotional service? Well, offenses against the holy name, they check the development of Krishna prema. That warning is there, that if one wants to achieve the desired goal of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna prema, love of Krishna, then one must avoid these 10 offenses. But unless one gives up the chanting altogether, these offenses, they do not result in degradation. Rather, one can just go on chanting and chanting for millions of births. But the very dangerous offense is Vaishnava aparad. We gave already the example of Daksha. So he offended Lord Shiva, who is a great Vaishnava. And thus he lost his head. So Vaishnava aparad must be avoided at all costs. Yes?
person even more attachment and aversion, unable to control his senses, in regular attention to supreme, can obtain the full worship of the Lord. Prabhupada elaborates on this in purport. And he said that this consciousness is the conscious mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to his sensual platform. So this is a little confusing. But that is a qualification for getting the Lord's mercy. But is that qualification itself the mercy of the Lord? So what is the prerequisite for that? You can understand. This is a prerequisite before attaining this.
Can you translate that? You cannot? He couldn't understand. Okay, anyway, I'll just translate the answer. The answer will be very simple. Very short. You just read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 31, and the purport. The answer to the question is there. Yes.
When one knows more things in the theory, is better or not? Because when one has more information about this philosophy that cannot use in practice, is this worse than to be a little learned, but to go and practice more, to serve more than to know so many things, or it's better to know many things, but this is for me. I sometimes feel that I cannot use all the things I know in practice, and sometimes I think this is offense.
Mm-hmm.
Is this offense to know so many rules, but you cannot go in practice?
You want to translate your own question to Bulgarian?
Някога чувствам, че знам много правила и описания от философията на лично съзнание, но не мога да изпълня всички. Това означава ли, че човек е по-добре повече да служи и малко така разпределено времето да че стане нещата?
So learning the philosophy, learning it theoretically is also devotional service. Generally, we have to learn first before we can put into practice. The intelligence has to be convinced. So we convince the intelligence to surrender by learning the philosophy. Just as it is said, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam. This progression is given in the nine processes of devotional service. So it begins with Shravanam, hearing. So first you hear. You learn. It's theoretical, but it's still devotional service. And then, after hearing, then you chant. So then, practical service begins. And by cultivating hearing and chanting better and better, then finally we come to the stage of being able to remember Krishna all the time. Now your question is about rules and regulations. So it is stated, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Smartavya. So all rules and regulations taken together mean only two things. That you should always remember Krishna, never forget him. So when by hearing and chanting you always remember Krishna, then you're doing everything. And if you say, yes, but I'm not able to remember Krishna always, you have to keep hearing and chanting. Okay, so it is, yes, Asan?
Защо аз ще дам друг момент от времето, като вие си имате
Because it's Krishna's plan. Krishna desired that the excess military force, Krishna didn't care what side, it be removed from the earth. Lord Krishna even removed his own Yadu dynasty later on by arranging that they would have a big fight. Yes.
Времето е връзката между материята и духа. А какво е местото на фалшивата такава схема?
Right there. Lord Shiva is also the Lord of the Ahamkara, false ego. You see, material nature is being moved by the time factor. And we become mixed up in these material actions and reactions, time, moving matter, because of Ahamkara, false ego. This body we have is moving because of time. But under the influence of Ahamkara we think, no, I am moving this body. So the two are inseparable. Yes? In the spiritual world, Krishna is the super soul. Because Krishna is in the hearts of his devotees. The Paramatma feature is the Lord who comes to help the conditioned souls fulfill their desires. But in the spiritual world, there are no material desires to fulfill. There is only desire to serve Krishna. So, therefore, Krishna is in the hearts of his devotees. Okay, so we will stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.